everyone. This is Miguel from Strategy Rewind. If you're listening on the Strategy Rewind podcast, I want to say thank you and encourage you to subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend to tell a friend, continue to share this podcast, create awareness of this podcast, and that it exists to help individuals establish their appropriate mindset and accomplish a breakthrough moment. Of course, in this month of February, we're going live every day for 30 minutes on the Wisdom application. And it is that conversation that has become part of the Strategy Rewind podcast. So if you want to join in on the live conversation as it takes place, consider downloading the Wisdom app. It is a free mobile application you can download, rather it be on your iOS or Android device. Once you hit that download, go ahead and subscribe, or rather hit the follow button there, because then you can, as I mentioned, become part of the conversation, which continues on today. Today we're talking about choices and the value and power of choices. I think it's important that we initiate our conversation speaking about values. We don't realize so often the values that we have in our life and what we consider to be important. The things we consider to be important actually will dictate the behaviors that we have, right? There's a quote, and it says, sow a thought and you reap an action. Sow an act and you reap a habit. Sow a habit and you reap a character. Sow a character and you reap a destiny. This is a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it's true, very true, in that if we start off small, if we start off with a thought, that thought can take actual growth process, and it becomes more than just a thought. It becomes an action. And so when we talk about doing the things we want to do, it most often initiates as a thought. We think about the possibility, we think about the probability, we think about the likeliness, we begin to imagine things, and most often we may lean on the side of optimism, although some of you may lean on the side of pessimism. That is, naturally, some of you may say it is possible, I can do it, I will do it. And others may say it isn't possible, I won't do it, I can't accomplish it. If I try, I'll fail, I'll fall on my face, or they may laugh, or they may this or that or the other. The truth is that there are two different mindsets. There's a growth mindset that sees the things the way they are, but also sees the possibility. And there's a fixed mindset, which it's the individual that just sees the things the way they are and says there is no hope. But when we begin to talk about actually determining your values and coming into an actual understanding of what is important to you and what is of high value to you, those things also play a factor in the choices you make. But here's the very interesting thing, that your values and your perspective is part of your worldview. Your values and your perspective is part of your worldview. And so what happens is that when you have real defined values, those values not only dictate the choices you make and the habits you create and the goals that you set for yourself, but it also impacts the way you view the world. And so you and I, we are living in a world that is constantly changing. It is rapidly changing. The world of technology alone is changing. Right now, everyone is talking about this new AP, this new AI system, right? That allows individuals to write music and do a bunch of other writing things that almost didn't seem like it was possible before. But the truth is that while the world around us is changing, rather it be from the technological standpoint or the financial standpoint, or rather it would be an environmental standpoint, while the world around us is changing, it's important for us to continue to evaluate our worldview. It's important for us to reevaluate our worldview because, as I mentioned, our worldview encompasses our values, our perspectives, what we stand for. And so often the issue is not that our worldview is wrong, it is that our worldview and our values may not match with what's going on around us, or may not match with the decisions that we're making, or may not match with the habits that we've formed for ourselves. So your values are highly important because they speak about who you are and exactly what you consider to be important, even in the face of difficulty, of challenges, even in the face. It is the compass, and it allows you to maintain accountable and actionable. That's what values do. For this reason, I always encourage people that when you are determining what your values are, to initially begin with four values, at least four values. If you go to my website, miguellebron.com, there you're going to find a list of core values. And from that list, what I recommend is starting off with four. Start off with four core values. And the reason I always say four is because you have to think of it as a compass. And on a compass, you have four directions: north, east, south, and west. So the idea is that as you're establishing your values, you're bringing it to these four things. These are the four top things in your life. These are the top four things that dictate your behavior, dictate your mindset, dictate the goals that you set. And so oftentimes we establish values that just no longer align with who we are. Like, for example, if you say that a core value for you is family, but you never spend time with your family, then is it really a core value? Or does it just sound nice to say that family is important to you? If you say that community is important to you, that that is one of your core values, then that means that you are building community, organizing community, strengthening community, not that you're isolating yourself. If you say that courage is a massive value to you, but in the face of challenges, you're the first one looking for the exit, well, then is courage really a value for you? If you say learning is a value for you, but you hate hearing TED Talks and you don't like reading or engaging with audiobooks or even having conversations with individuals who have different worldviews than you, then do you really love learning? If you say you love equality, but really what you mean is, I want to come up ahead, I want to be the one in the forefront, I want to be the one making the change, well, then is equality really important to you? Important that you begin to define your core values, because your core values, not only do they hold you accountable, but they create action. So if I say that one of my core values is family, then in the moment where I have this opportunity of maybe a business engagement or some type of trip or some type of opportunity, but it's going to cut into the time I give to my family, well, that value is going to anchor me in saying, man, that's a great opportunity, but I do not want to have that opportunity if it costs me being with my family. Now you make a choice. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about choices. And so often we fall into the trap of thinking or believing, well, things are the way they are, or I could never change the way things are, or we sometimes feel like, well, life is just happening and this is just what it is. No, it's not just is what it is. It's a choice that you're making. Someone once said, you are born looking like your parents and you die looking like your choices. And this is the truth. In every cemetery, you're going to find that there are dreams never accomplished, there are goals that never came to fruition, there are marriages that never started, there are things that never took place. In every cemetery, you'll see that. You just got to look at the tombstones. Are people that went to their grave and made choices that did not position themselves in such a way that they can live a life that actually has a legacy worth looking at. A legacy where everyone can say, yep, that's a blueprint there of how to live your life. I'm sure you have friends and families that you look at and be like, I don't ever want to be like that person. I don't ever want to do what that person is doing. Who wants to leave a legacy like that? Who wants to be the example of what not to do? Nobody wants to be that person. We all want to inspire, we all want to motivate, we all want to encourage, but it goes back to your values, because your values dictate your choices. And so often we establish goals, we establish an identity, and it may not be an incorrect identity, but it just may not be a realistic identity. And so, how do we build an identity for ourselves that is true to who we are? How do we actually become authentic to who we are? And the first thing you can do is begin to define your core values, because your values is going to help you determine the actions that you take. And it is in your choices where you begin to analyze and say, man, I said that XYZ was important to me, but I'm not living that out every day. I'm not doing the things that it requires for me to do. I'm not becoming the person or displaying as though I am the person that holds those things at high value. And you must understand that your choices is something you make, right? You make your choices. But after you have made your choices make you. And you make your choices, but after you've made your choices make you. You see what happens, what transpires next. I'm so curious to see if anyone here on the Wisdom app has maybe made some choices that maybe they weren't happy of, or maybe had to figure it out, right? Turn it around, say, wait a minute, this doesn't align with who I want to be. Smash that button, become a guest, have part in this conversation, because it's important for us to have these type of conversations, these authentic and genuine conversations. That, you know what, sometimes we make choices that don't align with our values. And here's something to take note. Initially, when you are making the choices that align with your values, if you have not been doing this for a very long time, if you just realized, hey, I've been going in a direction that doesn't align with the values that I have, or the worldview that I have, or the person that I want to become, if you realize that that's the case, when you initially begin to make the change, when you initially begin to make the choices that do align with the person you want to be and with the values that you do hold, what happens is that it's almost as if every part of you is fighting against that. And now you're in a battle, because I'm so used to doing these things, but I realize that those things don't align with who I want to be, right? I'm so used to lying, but I want to be an honest person. I'm so used to being stagnant and stuck, but I want to be someone who is growing and expanding. So what happens is that in the initial part of this, you may feel some sort of resistance, some internal resistance. And if you fight beyond that resistance, that initial resistance, if you fight beyond that, and you decide every day to make the choice, to show up, to recommit, what will happen is that those choices that seem difficult to make, eventually it will seem difficult to not make those choices. Those choices that initially may seem difficult to make, eventually it will be difficult to not make those choices. It will be difficult to not continue that habit. It will be difficult to break that routine. Why? Because you understand that this better aligns with who you want to be and where you want to go. So often we have these ideas that things are just happening, that it's just by chance. It's not by chance. There are some choices you're making. And if you're not liking the result you're seeing, then instead of pointing the finger to everyone else, instead of getting mad at the climate, the economy, the presidency, instead of getting mad at your mama and your daddy or whoever or whatever, instead of getting mad at all of that, pull out a mirror, look at yourself, because there you'll find that the choices you've been making is what has led you to a place where you don't wish to be. You'll find that it's the choices you're making. And as you begin to determine your values, and as you begin to reevaluate your worldview, then you can make better decisions that are aligned with who you want to be. So we ought to be encouraged to not be conformed to this time, to this day, to this age, to whatever may be happening in this world, to whatever may be happening in your vicinity, in your community. We should not be conformed to that, but rather we should be transformed by the renewing of our mind. But how does this renewing of the mind happen? It's when we come to the realization these things that I'm doing do not actually fulfill the person I want to be. These actions that I'm taking, these habits that I've formed, these thoughts that I've thought, these things I've engaged with actually don't bring to life the person I want to be. This is how you renew your mind. And the truth is that conversations like the one we're having here today are the very conversations that initially can make you feel uncomfortable. They can make you feel uncomfortable. And you may want to not be a part of the conversation. But your refusal to be part of the conversation doesn't mean that the conversation isn't taking place. I remember I had a professor of mine who shared a story with the class. He said that when he was learning how to drive, his mother had sent him to the store to buy something. And so he got on in the vehicle and he drove down the road, but he was just learning how to drive. And so there he was driving, but he decided that he was going to park the car on the opposite side of the road so that he could get out of the driver's seat and walk inside the store and then quickly get back into the driver's seat. Well, what happened was that as he was parked on the opposite side of the road, a police officer came and he rushed outside of the store and said, "Officer, what's going on?" And the officer said, "Don't you realize you're parked on the wrong side of the road?" And he said, "I didn't even know that. I'm just learning how to drive. My mom told me to come get something at the store. I just figured it would be okay for me to go ahead and park my car this way and rush inside." And the police officer said to him, "Young boy, don't you understand what you're doing? Young man, don't you understand the law?" And he replied and said, "No, I didn't even know." Police officer pulled out a notebook and started writing a ticket, and he responded to him and said, "Why are you writing me a ticket? I told you I didn't know." And he said, "Your ignorance of the law does not eliminate the law." Now, your ignorance of what should be done doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done. And the ignoring this conversation of choices doesn't mean that it's not going to take place. And it doesn't mean that the choices that you're making may be the very thing that is pushing you away from the breakthrough moment you've been waiting for. So I would encourage you. I would encourage you to begin to make a list of the things that are so important to you. And maybe you say, "I've already got the list in my mind. I don't need to write it down." I encourage you, write it down. See it on paper. Because when you write it out, when you see it, when you read it, you're using all of your senses, and it heightens you to the realization of, okay, maybe this isn't really a value, or maybe it was, but it isn't any longer. Maybe you had number one value being your career, but then you realized, hey, you know what? I've accomplished everything in my career. I think I want to focus on my family, or I think I want to focus on connections. I think I want to focus on having more fun because I focused so much on the finances that I didn't focus on the fun. Or maybe you didn't realize that you put at the very top of your list sexuality and you're dependent on that. And you realize, wait a minute, that no longer identifies who I want to be. I want to be a more spiritual person, someone who's actually in tune with their inner person and not just the exterior. This is why it's important to reevaluate your values, write them down. And again, if you're maybe determining, okay, how do I get started with these values? I would encourage you, head over to miguellebron.com, click on the coaching tab, and there you can select where it says core values. And there's about 50 of them that we've laid out for you. And what I would suggest that you start off with 4 because it serves as a compass. And at the end of this, after you've selected those four that you're going to select, there's also an article that you can read. It's a free article that you can read where it's titled, Can Core Values Change? Can core values change? And one reason why goals aren't accomplished is because we fail to revisit our values. So today we're talking about choices. We have the power of actually making choices that will lead us to our breakthrough moment. The same way we have the power to make choices that will not lead us to the breakthrough moment. And we've made a choice here, which is to stream live, connect live on the Wisdom application. And this conversation will then become part of the Strategy Rewind podcast, which is a podcast that focuses on the mindset and strategies necessary for a breakthrough moment. So, for those of you who are right now connected and listening through the Strategy Rewind podcast, I want to encourage you to check out the Wisdom application because it allows you to become part of the conversation. But you can also listen to many other talks that are taking place right now. You can also ask questions and even curate those questions with the ones you like so that you can always get the knowledge, the wisdom, the tools, and insight you need. Download the mobile application. It's free for iOS and Android. And if you're listening on the Wisdom application, go ahead and hit that button there, become a guest, have part of this conversation, bring further insight. Is there something that maybe stands out to you of what we're talking about here today? Or was there a moment in your life where you had to reevaluate your core values, where you understood that the choices you were making did not align with the person you wanted to be or where you wanted to go in life? Of course, I also want to encourage you, those who are connected here on the Wisdom app, to check out the Strategy Rewind podcast. Consider subscribing, rating, reviewing, tell a friend to tell a friend, all those wonderful things. But we're talking about today choices. You have a choice, and it's a choice to decide to be more in tune with the person you want to become, or it's the choice to neglect, to not pay attention to who you are. We talk about procrastination. I often define procrastination as delegating the responsibility you have today to your future self. And this is because, considering that it is your responsibility, you won't be able to hide from it for too long before it knocks at your door, before you are confronted with the very responsibility that you have tried to dodge and hide from. And so as you navigate this year is just starting off. We're entering into this new month. We are entering into a new week, and it should be that you are looking ahead with great optimism. It should be that, I was having this conversation with my daughters. I was asking them, how was January for you? Did you accomplish your goals? Did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish? Or did you not? What did you like about it? What did you not? And these are the questions you should be asking yourself. Did I accomplish the things I set out to accomplish in January? And if your innate response is it's too soon to tell, it ain't too soon to tell. We're in February already. January is behind us. That means you no longer have 12 months. You now have 11 months. You have 11 months ahead of you. So it would behoove you to understand, am I in the path? Am I in the road that I need to be? As a personal growth strategist, I help individuals think strategically. But what does this mean to think strategically? It means to not get stuck on the problem. It means to actually think of an alternative way to shift and maneuver. And too often we get stuck with the problems and the issues and the conflicts, and we never actually pivot. But when you think strategically, you're able to step back, see the bigger picture, and pivot accordingly. You're able to pivot so that you can accomplish your breakthrough moment. Your goal stays in the forefront. It doesn't mean that you won't have storms or difficulties or trials or tribulations, but it means that the goal is at the forefront. The vision is clear. And so you're able to pivot and maneuver. That's what it means to think strategically. You're not limited by what is taking place, but rather, even in the environment of what's taking place, you walk above the storm, right? You fly above the storm, the dark clouds. And so often in our life, we are surrounded by what seems to be a hurricane. And yet, the safest place is the eye of the hurricane. If you find yourself in the eye of the hurricane, everything around you may be upside down and tipsy turvy and seem to be destroyed. But when you think strategically, you understand, no, I can maneuver. If I hold on, if I keep moving, if I stay focused, I will find myself on the other side. And as a personal growth strategist, that's the job. I help individuals to think strategically. So, how often have you found yourself stuck, feeling like you can't move forward, or feeling like you're in quicksand? And no matter how many times you try to move ahead, it feels like you can't. How many times have you felt as though there is a force pushing you back, and you feel like you're doing 2 steps forward and 30 back? Why live this year that way? Why not make a choice? A choice to actually partner with a personal growth strategist, a choice to invest in yourself, a choice to determine this is the moment where my real story starts. Everything else was an introduction. This is the real story. This is the story I want to share. The choices you make today will echo in eternity. And the choices you make today will make you later on. And you were born looking like your parents, but you will die looking like your choices. Wouldn't it be nice to know that the choices you've made have laid down a blueprint so that the generation that comes behind you will actually be able to see the right road to take, will actually be inspired and motivated? Head over to MiguelLebron.com or use the link in the bio so that you can go ahead, or the show notes, so you can go ahead and set up a free 30-minute strategy session. In that strategy session, we will converse about where you are, where you want to be, and bring forth clarity. Can we work together so that you can obtain your breakthrough moment, so that you can think strategically and no longer be stopped by the giants and the dragons, but rather that you can obtain the treasure? In every story, think about this. In every story, there are giants and dragons. In every story, there is a castle. In every story, there is a treasure that needs to be taken. And too many of us have stopped because of the giants and the dragons that have come into our life. And because of this, we haven't taken the treasure. So I'll make it super easy. If you're listening on the Wisdom app and you're ready to go to that next level, send me a message, type the word legacy, and we'll get connected. Send me a message, type the word legacy, and we will get connected. I'll provide you information that will allow you to set forth the goals appropriately so that you can have your breakthrough moment. No longer allowing yourself to be intimidated by the giants, by the dragons, but rather taking hold of the treasure that lies ahead. And remember, it's your choice. It is your choice. There may have been moments in your life where you felt powerless, but you never really lost the power. And the power to say yes and the power to say no. I am today encouraging you to say yes to a better future. Yes to a better you. Yes to a better tomorrow. Yes to a breakthrough moment. But even if you say no, the question is, what legacy will you leave? How will you be remembered when you have left the room? Furthermore, how will you be remembered when you have left this earth? Because the choices you make and the choices I make those choices, they echo in eternity. Thank you for being connected here today. Surround yourself with people that will nourish your vision.